All right, strap yourselves in because we're taking a deep dive into some seriously fascinating fan theories today.
Should I be worried?
Well, that depends. Are you a fan of Slim Shady?
Eminem. Sure, who isn't?
Okay, good, because we're about to unpack a theory about whether Marshall Mathers, aka Eminem, might be an Enneagram Type 4.
Interesting. Type 4s, those are the artists, the romantics, always searching for their true identity, wanting to be seen as unique.
Exactly. And the YouTuber who sent this in goes even deeper, claiming Eminem specifically embodies the traits of a sexual 4.
Ah, now it gets juicy. So we're not just talking about your average yearning for connection type 4. The sexual 4 subtype brings a whole other level of intensity to the table.
That's one way to put it. So for our listeners who might not be fluent in Enneagram, how would you explain that intensity? What sets the sexual 4 apart?
Imagine this. You have that core type 4 desire to find your identity, to be seen as special, unique. But for the sexual 4, that desire isn't just about feeling understood. It's almost like a hunger for a connection so deep, so consuming, that it becomes the defining factor in their lives.
So it's less about quietly expressing your individuality and more about seeking out those intense, almost all-consuming connections with others.
Precisely. And this isn't just your run-of-the-mill desire for closeness. We're talking about a burning need to be the most important person in their loved one's life, to have a bond that's all-encompassing. It's passionate, it's intense, and let's be honest, it can lead to some pretty dramatic scenarios, just like, some of the drama we've seen play out in Eminem's life.
Exactly. And this YouTuber seems to think that drama is a key piece of the puzzle. They even went as far as to call out what they see as aggressive envy and arrogant vindication laced throughout his work.
Well, those are certainly some strong words, but it sounds like we're in for an interesting deep dive.
Oh, absolutely. We're about to put on our Enneagram detective hats and see if there's any truth to this theory.
All right, let's do it. Where do we begin?
Well, this YouTuber kicks things off by pointing to what they call the sheer rawness of Eminem's lyrics.
That's definitely a good place to start.
They argue that it's not just that his music is full of emotion, but that it practically bleeds vulnerability, rage, this deep inner turmoil that's often associated with Type 4s in general. But, and this is where the sexual 4 subtype comes in, they believe Eminem doesn't just reflect on these emotions internally, he externalizes them, often in dramatic and attention-grabbing ways.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
It's like his art, his relationships, those become the outlets for this intense inner world.
So instead of just feeling things deeply, he needs to express those feelings outwardly, often in ways that demand a reaction, a response from the other person. It's almost like he's saying, see me, feel this with me, experience this intensity that I'm feeling.
Exactly. It's not just about having a unique perspective, it's about making sure everyone else sees and acknowledges that uniqueness as well.
And what better way to do that than through music, especially in the world of hip-hop, where self-expression and storytelling are so central?
Exactly. So, are you ready to dive into some of Eminem's lyrics and see if this theory holds water?
Let's do it. Hit me with your best shot.
All right, so let's talk about Kim.
Yeah, you can't really have a conversation about raw emotion in Eminem's music without bringing that one up.
Exactly. I mean, even without getting into the nitty-gritty lyrical content, which we won't, that song just screams raw, unfiltered emotion.
It's like a punch to the gut. You can practically feel the pain, the anger, the desperation in every word.
And that intensity, according to this YouTuber, isn't just random, it's directed.
So we're back to that sexual 4 need for connection, even if it's through chaos.
Exactly. They argue that for a sexual 4, those intense emotions are often channeled towards a specific person, almost like they're trying to elicit an equally intense response from them. It's that push and pull dynamic again.
Okay, I see what they're getting at. It's like they need to know that the other person feels it just as deeply as they do, even if those feelings are negative.
Right. And this YouTuber points to Eminem's actual relationship with Kim Scott as another piece of evidence. I mean, talk about a tumultuous, on-again, off-again, public roller coaster of a relationship.
Definitely fits the bill for dramatic. But is that enough to draw conclusions about his Enneagram type? I don't know.
Well, that's fair. Obviously, there are plenty of artists with turbulent personal lives who aren't necessarily sexual 4s.
Exactly. You can't just point to a messy relationship and shout Enneagram.
But this YouTuber argues that it's not just about the drama itself. It's about the specific patterns in those relationships. They claim that Eminem's tendency to seek out these intense, all-consuming connections, often followed by jealousy, possessiveness, even a fear of abandonment when that intensity isn't reciprocated, aligns with what you might typically see from a sexual 4.
So it's not just about the intensity of the emotions, but also the way those emotions play out in the context of a relationship.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. This YouTuber doesn't just see this pattern in Eminem's personal life. They see it reflected in his music career as well.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, they point to the diss tracks, the fugues, this constant need to prove himself as the best in the game as evidence. Their argument is that it's like he's seeking out that same intense connection, that same validation and recognition, but this time it's through his music and his interactions with other artists.
It's almost like he's using the music industry as a stage for these dramatic relational dynamics to play out. He needs a rival, someone to spar with, both lyrically and emotionally.
And it's not just about proving he's talented, it's about being seen as the best, the most unique, the most authentic.
Which again speaks to that core fear of the sexual 4. If I'm not exceptional, if I'm not the most whatever, then what am I? Where's the validation?
Okay, so we've got the turbulent personal life, the competitive drive in his career, all potentially pointing towards this sexual 4 pattern. But we haven't even touched on the lyrics themselves yet. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Is there anything in Eminem's actual music that supports this YouTuber's theory?
Well, this YouTuber certainly thinks so. They pull out some pretty specific examples, starting with The Real Slim Shady.
And in The Real Slim Shady, they specifically focus on the lines where he disses pop stars, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and SYNC. It's classic Eminem taking shots at everyone.
But is it just playful provocation or something more?
Well, this YouTuber argues it's more than just Eminem being outrageous. They see it as a calculated move to distance himself from what he perceives as the inauthenticity of mainstream pop music. It's like he's saying, I'm not like these manufactured pop stars. I'm raw. I'm real. I'm the real deal.
Which, when you think about it, aligns perfectly with that sexual 4 desire to be seen as unique, exceptional, even superior in some ways. It's like they need to set themselves apart from the crowd, and sometimes that means tearing others down in the process.
Okay, so The Real Slim Shady gives us a glimpse into the competitive, almost envious side of the sexual 4. What about Without Me?
Now, that one is interesting because on the surface, it seems like the opposite of insecurity. It's Eminem at his most confident, most braggadocious.
Right, it's like an anthem of self-aggrandizement.
Exactly. And yet, this YouTuber argues that even in those boasts, in those declarations of being the best, there's a hint of insecurity lurking beneath the surface. They point to lines like, I'm back, I'm here to stay, as evidence. It's almost as if he's trying to convince himself as much as his audience.
So all that bravado is actually a defense mechanism, a way to silence those inner doubts about his own worth.
That's the theory. They argue that for a sexual 4, maintaining that sense of self-importance, that belief that they are extraordinary, is crucial to their sense of identity. And sometimes that means overcompensating for their insecurities with exaggerated displays of confidence and achievement.
Wow. Okay, so far we've got The Real Slim Shady, highlighting the envy and need for distinction, and Without Me hinting at the insecurity hiding beneath the bravado. But this YouTuber didn't stop there. For their final piece of lyrical evidence, they brought out the big guns. Killshot, Eminem's scathing diss track aimed at Machine Gun Kelly.
Ah, Killshot. Now that one definitely doesn't hold back. If we're talking about aggressive envy and arrogant vindication, that song pretty much embodies those phrases.
Exactly. And this YouTuber argues that Killshot is the culmination of all the sexual 4 tendencies we've been discussing. The need to be the best, the fear of being overshadowed, the willingness to lash out with incredible force to protect their position.
And what's fascinating is that they don't just see it as an isolated incident. They argue that this tendency towards conflict, this need to assert dominance, is woven throughout Eminem's entire career. From his early battles in the rap battle scene to his high-profile feuds with other artists, it's like he thrives on that friction, that opportunity to prove he's still at the top of his game.
So it's not just about the music itself, it's about the drama, the competition, the constant need for validation through conquest.
Exactly. And while this might seem excessive or even unhealthy to some, this YouTuber argues that for a sexual 4, it's all part of their unique way of navigating the world, of seeking out the intense connections and recognition they crave.
This has been fascinating. But we've got to wrap up. So, big question. Is Eminem a sexual 4?
Honestly, we'd need Slim Shady himself to take an Enneagram test to know for sure. And even then, it's ultimately up to each individual to decide if a label like that resonates with them.
Exactly. But label or no label, this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. The power of personality, the complexities of human motivation, and the surprising ways those inner drives can manifest in our lives, in our relationships, and for someone like Eminem, in their art.
And isn't that what's so great about these kinds of deep dives? It's not about arriving at a definitive answer. It's about sparking curiosity, encouraging different perspectives, and reminding us that even in our most raw, unfiltered moments, there's often more to the story than meets the eye.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, to our listeners, what do you think? Does this analysis resonate with you? Let us know your thoughts. And until next time, keep exploring those fan theories, and we'll be back to unpack more of them with you soon.
See you next time.